As a team leader, you're only doing as well as the people you lead. So you have to make sure that you are providing value, that you are preparing, that you're training, that you're coaching.
Welcome to the Mega Team Mastermind Podcast. I'm your host, John Tiller. In each episode, we have dynamic conversations with industry powerhouses, mega team leaders, coaches, and other thought leaders who are shaping the future of real estate teams. This podcast is brought to you by megateammentor.com, where you can get a free detailed assessment of your real estate team's health, including a free customized scorecard that will quickly and objectively diagnose the strengths and weaknesses of your real estate team business. Now, let's get started on the journey of growth, impact, and legacy building with today's episode. Welcome back to the Mega Team Mastermind Podcast, where we interview successful real estate team leaders and the people who influence them. I'm your host, John Tiller, and today we have got an influencer who actually falls into both of those categories. Someone who I've been excited ever since we started the podcast. I wanted to make sure that we got him on, and he was gracious enough to accept our invitation. Chris Heller, the CEO of Movoto and the team leader of his own team out of San Diego. And I'm just going to dive right into it. Chris, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, John, it's my pleasure. Always happy to chat, and especially on the topic of teams and agents.
So you have, you've got quite the journey and quite the story, Chris, which includes team leader, includes tech company, business leader, industry leader in the tech side, and also a lot more than that, author. And so, yeah, just tell us about your journey along the way and let us know what that looks like. Introduce us to Chris Heller.
It started a long time ago. I was 20 years old. I was a sophomore in college and got my real estate license. Originally, it was just for a summer job of selling timeshares to make some money. And that turned into a 3-year long summer job, and then evolved into building a marketing company. And along the way, I'd met a real estate broker, and for 3 years, he kept recruiting me, sending me handwritten notes, calling me every time I saw him, trying to get me to come and join his brokerage. And one day he caught me at what I like to describe as a weak moment. And I said, okay, I'll give it a try. And didn't really know what real estate was. I owned a property and I understood physically what real estate was, but I didn't understand anything about the business, like nothing about the business. And that first year, I was rookie of the year in San Diego. I sold 27 homes. At the end of that year, I hired an assistant, which back then in 1989 was kind of unheard of. No one had assistants. A year later, I had a showing assistant. And as I kept selling more and more homes, I needed more people to help me, and the team grew. Now, real estate teams were not a concept then. So we didn't
Right, not at all. I mean, not at all.
It was, yeah. So, but that was the team. In fact, it's kind of fast forward 16 years later, I'm one of the top 10 agents for this national company in the country. And someone gives me a copy. This is 2004. Someone gives me a copy of Gary Keller's book, The Millionaire Real Estate Agent. And I read that book and I was like, oh my gosh, here's a company that's figured out, and it's right here in this book, what took me 16 years of blood, sweat, and tears to figure out. Mm-hmm. And it was like, that book just described my business, like 99%.
Wow.
So I ultimately ended up moving to Keller Williams that year. And after flying to Austin and meeting with Gary and the CEO, Mark Willis. 5 years later, I was the #1 Keller Williams agent in the world. The next year, I took an executive role with the company and started building Keller Williams globally. So for 5 years, I traveled all over the world and launched Keller Williams in over 20 different countries, and then ultimately became the CEO of the company. So I went from being an agent, building a team. I had some brokerages built some brokerages along the way, and then ultimately became the CEO of the company. After 13 and a half years at Keller Williams, I left. I ultimately became the CEO of a company called Mellow Home, which was owned by part of Loan Depot, the second largest non-bank lender in the country. Several years prior to that, I got heavily involved, as you mentioned, with real estate technology, actually really from the early 2000s, but pretty heavily from like 2015 on. An investor in several companies, an advisor, and on the board of companies. I was on the board of a company called Ojo, I ultimately joined them full time in 2019. In 2020, we bought Movoto.com, which is the fifth largest portal in the country. So there's Zillow, Realtor, Homes, Redfin, and Movoto. We're the largest one no one's ever heard of. And we're also the largest privately owned one. All the others are public companies. And we operate Movoto and partner with agents and teams all over the country and making buyer and seller introductions to them. So that's the Reader Digest version of the journey.
Yeah, and you've written a book also about, I guess it's on mindset. I'm sorry I haven't read it yet, and I made a note as we started this call that I'm like, man, I'm going to go grab that. Tell us about the book that you wrote.
Yeah, it's a book called Dominant Thoughts. It's a quick and easy read. It'll take you an hour and a half to read it. It's a parable, business parable. Each chapter is really a lesson that I've learned in my life. I've had the opportunity to have some great mentors in my life and really fortunate to have had them. And this little story is it's a story about a mentor and his mentee. And each chapter covers one of the major lessons, whether it's um, not listening to your wants and don't wants, or not being attached to the outcome, or showing up and just all the different things that we know need to be successful. And I wrote it as a parable because early on in my career, a lot of the books that I read, like The Greatest Salesman in the World by Og
Sure.
Mandino, or The Richest Man in Babylon, some of
Right.
those little books when I was in my early 20s really had a profound impact on me and my journey. So hope that this one would do the same for folks.
Stories communicate so well. I think of all the business books that have been written that start in the form of a parable, and they're just massively successful, and because they connect. And yeah, that's amazing. So tell me a little bit about, so with your leadership journey, I mean, that's pretty amazing that you went from, hey, I read a book that sounded just like me, to I became the CEO of the company of that, which was probably you helped grow it to the largest company in the largest brokerage, or at least one of the top brokerages in the country. So tell us just a little bit more about your journey there. And was that like, where did you learn to lead? We talk a lot about leadership on this podcast, some
Yeah.
tactics and strategies for sure, and we'll get to those. But really, from a leadership standpoint, where do you feel like you pulled most of your leadership lessons along the way?
Yeah, that's a really good question, John. I think it was just through really understanding my strengths and weaknesses and looking at what was holding me back from growing bigger or more. Early in my career, I didn't think about that. And if I didn't think it was important, my
Mm,
attitude was back then was sort of, well, everyone should just be driven like me and focused. And I don't need recognition. Why do they need recognition, right? And what happened as a result of that is I've always attracted really talented people my whole life. And that'd be a whole nother conversation. I'm not sure how that happens, but that continues to happen. But early on, it was a revolving door that they wouldn't stick around because I was a horrible leader and manager, right? Because I didn't value it or didn't think it was important or didn't even connect the dots. And most of that was just a lack of maturity and a lack of business maturity. So as time went on, I realized, hey, I'm the issue. I'm the
mm,
common denominator here. And so I made a very conscious effort, probably read early on 150, 200 leadership books. I mean, any book on leadership I get my hands on, I read it, committed to learning and understanding and how to become a good leader and still work at it every day. And so that was like the conscious effort to become a good leader. The leadership roles were had were sort of separate from that. Those came about like most things in my life have come about. And that is that those were opportunities that were created by the results I was getting.
mm,
I was never one to ask for anything. In fact, I'm to this day not a great advocate for myself. I would never ask a speaker to be put on their stage or to be on a panel or for anything. My attitude was I'm just going to get such extreme results that they won't be able to ignore me or that
mm,
they'll ask me. And that's what I did. And the opportunities that I've gotten, whether it's become the president of Keller Williams Worldwide or the CEO of Keller Williams or the CEO of Miller Home or the president of Movoto, those all came out of getting results, being recognized for those results, and results create opportunities. And it doesn't mean that, if anyone's listening to this and thinking, well, they don't need to have goals or anything like that. I'm not saying that, because I think goals are important. But personally, I never had the goal. Like when I read that book, I didn't think, oh, someday I'm going to be the leader of this company. My only goal every year was to be the best I could be and be the best of the best and to get the best possible results. I think I knew inherently that if I got great results, that would create opportunities. I just didn't know exactly what those opportunities would be.
Well, and there's so much there, right? There's so much coaching out there. There's lots of people who are doing coaching who haven't ever gotten results, and they're only gonna attract so many people. And so to start with results and just know that, hey, while I have a plan to get my results, I don't know exactly where that's going to end up, but you trusting the process of knowing that, hey, listen, if I can produce, then that's going to bring good things into my world. And that's really incredible. So when you did focus, when you did realize that beyond results, because there's so many team leaders, right, who have produced results in the position they're in right now. A lot of our listeners, the position they're in right now is they're great at getting results. What they're trying to do now is get their time back, or they're trying to scale their profit through other people's work. Not that they're not willing to work, but that they want to get off the transaction treadmill, want to build that mega team. And they know they have to become better leaders. What were some of the resources that you used that were most impactful for you to move from getting results, specifically production related results, to transitioning into that leadership mentality and role?
So one of the things was realizing that when it came to being able to create leverage, to do more or to do something different, that I had to have really talented people. So if I was going to not do something and hire someone to do that, I had a rule, and the rule was they had to be as good or better than me in that role or in that task or that job that they were doing. Because if they weren't, I never truly could let go of it, right? If they weren't as good as me, that means I'm having to still be involved. So one of my rules, if I'm going to replace as an agent, for example, when I decided, okay, I needed to free up more time to grow my business more, and negotiations were taking a lot of time. So I said, okay, I'm not going to handle the negotiations anymore. I'm going to have someone do that. So I trained someone for 3 years to get as good as me at negotiations, to the point where I'd walk by the office and hear him on the phone, and I would hear my words coming out of his mouth. I'm like,
Right.
okay, he's got it right. Um, so that way I could let go of that and know that things would be handled the way that they should be handled, and that the clients would be served at the level that they need to be served. So that's one concept, of just hiring talent to create that leverage. I think the other things, go ahead, were you going to ask something?
No, go ahead. Please keep going.
The other things are, as opportunities come up, as we get results and we create opportunities, that is being really clear on what we want, right? There's more opportunities out there than we realize. And if you're at the point where you're making a transition, there are more doors that you could choose to go through than you can even imagine. It's a big world with a lot of opportunities. So then it's like, okay, how do you choose the right ones? And what's your criteria of really understanding what's important to you? So I know for me, it's really simple. Like if I'm going to do anything at a high level, I know it's going to take a lot of time, energy, and effort. And it's going to take a team. And so the most important thing for me is, who is that team? Who are the people I'm going to be spending that time with? That's the top on the list. Do they have integrity? Do I trust and respect them? Do they trust and respect me? Do I like them? Is it going to be fun? Right? That's like number one on the list. Number 2, 3, 4, and 5 are financial opportunities and structures and roles and all those things. But I know what the most important things are, the non-negotiables, and those are the things that I don't negotiate on.
That makes perfect sense. So tell me about, have you ever, so using that criteria, those those criteria of they have to be better than me, they have to be as good as or better than me, and they have to kind of fit my values, right? The things they, and I got to want to work with them. We've got a, I believe Don Winter is, he calls it the chug test. I want to be able to, I want to know that everybody I work with I can sit down and have a beer with, and but people that you actually like working with. Do you remember a time where there was somebody, and would love for you to be specific, don't have to name the person for sure, but do you remember a time where you brought somebody on the team, you thought they passed all of the criteria, and you brought them on and then you realized they didn't pass all of those criteria? How did you handle that? How do you handle something like that?
Yeah. So the first thing I do is I look in the mirror and I look at myself
Mm.
and say, okay, am am I doing two things, right? Am I providing everything that I need to do for them to succeed and win, like the training, the coaching, the guidance? Have I put them in the right position? And if I haven't, then I know what I need to do. Now, if I've done all those things and they're still not succeeding or winning or not what I thought they'd be, then I look at, okay, is it a capacity issue? There's their capacity here, but it needs to be here. And if it is, then I know, okay, I'm now trying to, cram a square peg into a round hole. That never works. So I either need to move that person into a position where they can win or help them find another opportunity. And that's the quick and easy, I shouldn't say easy, but the quick and simple way that I look at it is like, okay, first of all, have I done everything on my end to put them in a position to win? And if I have, and I can honestly say that, then, and I think there's one piece in the middle I probably left out, and that is, if I've done that, then have I effectively communicated and set the expectations so they know what they need to do to win? And then if I've done those two things, they're still not winning, then is it a capacity issue?
That's so good. Looking at ourselves first is so important. And yet, the thing that we don't do naturally, right? We think, well, they should just, like, I'm not the problem. They're the problem. I told them what they should be doing. And what a great way to, what a great place to start. And then I hear you saying, hey, got to make sure they might be in the wrong seat on the right bus. If they're on the right bus, if this is the right place for them to be, but they just need another seat, then we'll push, we'll make an opportunity there. But again, looking back at ourselves, for effectively communicating. How long do you give someone if you've checked all of those boxes and you feel like maybe or maybe not those boxes weren't checked, but now you've checked them. You have effectively communicated. You've given them every opportunity. How long until it's a reasonable amount of time to say, "Hey, listen, this just isn't working. We need to find you something somewhere else on somebody else's team."
Yeah. So I'm gonna depend on the role. I'm gonna choose. It's either gonna be 30 days, 60 days, or 90 days, and I'm gonna communicate. Here's what needs to happen in the next 30 days, or in the next 60 days, or in the next 90 days, and the and make sure they understand clearly, what needs to happen for it to be a win. Here's what I found. When you do that, one of two things happens. Either they do the things that need to be done, or prior to the 30 days or the 60 days or 90 days, they self-discover that it's not going to
Yes.
happen. And they say, hey, Chris, I don't think this is going to work. I don't think this is the right role, or I think, we should talk about making a change.
That's so good. And
John, I want to go back to one thing you said, because I think it's super important that you touched on, and that is, you said looking at yourself. Yeah, in my mind, the whole concept is taking responsibility and being responsible. Right. When you said that, it made me think back, and I think I actually wrote about this in Dominant Thoughts. But when I was young, or my early 20s, I got invited, and I wish I knew who invited me, but someone invited me to go hear this speaker. He's a speaker and author, and I ended up in the front row. His name was Dr. Dennis Waitley. He'd written a book called The Psychology of Winning. And I remember, like, this is a long time ago. This is 40 years ago.
wow.
But I remember it vividly. And I remember him at one point saying, hey, I'm going to write 10 two-letter words up on the board. And he turned around, and this is when we still had chalkboards. And he wrote up on the chalkboard, if it is to be, it is up to me. And when he wrote that, it was like no one else existed in the room. And it hit me like, okay, I'm responsible. I'm responsible for the good, the bad, and the ugly. And when you take responsibility, it gives you power. It gives you the power to make change. It gives you the power to do something. if you're putting responsibility on someone else, if you're blaming them or being a victim or anything else, you're giving away all your power. You're giving away the ability to move things forward in a positive manner. So I think that what you touched on is super important, the concept of being responsible.
Well said, man. Well said. That's an amazing story. And if it is to be, it's up to me. That's good stuff right there. So let me move on to another a little bit of a subject. Another subject. You've seen and invested a lot in this industry. You've been through a lot of cycles in the industry. You've been through a lot of positions in the industry. You have been an influencer and you have been influenced by people in the industry, leading the way you've done in the companies that you've built and the things you've accomplished. You've built your resume. I had John Cheplack on here a little while ago, and he mentioned, hey, I built my resume. Here's the reason why I do what I do. And that's my question for you is, you could stop now and be very proud of what you've contributed to this industry. What's your motivation to keep building and to keep going? What's that motivation? Because we have a lot of folks here who they have created the results and they're wondering, why should I keep going?
Yeah. I get asked that question, you know, on a fairly regular basis. And I probably give a different answer every time because it's a really good question. It's not one that if I'm not asked, I never think about that.
Mm-hmm.
I still have a burning desire. I still have a burning desire to achieve, to grow, to improve, to build. And I like challenges and I'm competitive. I'm competitive with myself and I like to win. So what keeps me going is, hey, if there's a big opportunity and a big challenge and I get to do it with people I like, love, and respect, and we're going to make it fun, doesn't mean it's not going to be hard. It doesn't mean some days that I wish I wasn't doing it or I don't ask myself, why am I doing it? But overall, it's like those are the things I enjoy. And that's sort of the same idea or the same questions we get asked about work or why do you work so hard or why do you work so much? It's like, well, when you're doing things you really like, it doesn't occur as work, right?
Right.
It's just what you do. It's what you're doing.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think so the simple answer to your question, John, is if I'm having fun and it's challenging and there's a path to winning, then I like to do it.
Well, and the alternative is to not have fun, not have a challenge, not do something that seems meaningful to do. And so I love it. I think that's inspiring to a lot of folks. Most of the folks, I would say you've got seniority over most people that are listening to this in the industry. And to hear that from you means a lot. So a lot of our team leaders are asking the question about recruiting, whether a small, laser focused ninja team is better or a large team that's always recruiting multiple agents per month or at least attempting to recruit multiple agents per month. In your mind, Chris, in your experience, what's the preferred model?
I don't know if I have a preferred model, but here's what I think is important. I think you need to be one or the other of those. You can't be in the middle. To be profitable, which is the goal of business, you either need to be that small laser focused team or you need to be a large team doing it at scale. The most challenging part is to be in between those because you have the infrastructure to grow big and do what you need to do, but you also have those expenses. And unless you're big enough to have enough revenue to cover those expenses, that's the hardest place to be profitable. So here's what you shouldn't do. The decision shouldn't be based on ego, right? It's not about the biggest, it's not about like, for years, the first 16 years of my career, I had a very small laser focused team. I was top 10 in the country out of 37,000 agents at the time, but I was always number 2 in San Diego. The number 1 team was much bigger, did a lot more business, and made a lot less money than me. I would meet with the owner of that team every year, and he was lucky if he had enough money to pay his taxes. And I was saving a lot of money every year. So I was more interested in what I put in my bank account, than I was in being number 1. So I think I don't think there's a right or wrong. You need to, again, play to your strengths. It's either that small laser focused team that's highly effective, highly efficient, highly profitable, or a large team that's highly effective, efficient, highly profitable. Being in the middle is the hard part.
Being in the middle is the hard part for sure. And to your point, there's also once you get to a certain size, there's a place where you can't ever take your eye off the P&L. You can't ever take your eye off the expenses. I have another friend, not in San Diego, who's a phenomenal team leader who runs the largest team in his major market. It's a market. If I even said the market, you would know who it is. And he told me, I was shocked. He told me that he lost $900,000 in the third quarter of a year a couple of years ago. And there was nothing dramatic to his business that he could account for that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I love just whatever you're going to do, make sure that you're doing it for the efficiency and the profitability of a team that size. I love that answer. I love that. So there are some pretty hot topics that are affecting our industry right now. And they are, as we're recording this podcast, NAR is rolling out the changes of the NAR settlement. That's kind of the big one that's on people's minds as we're recording. Tell me about, you've been through a lot of things, and I'm sure you've got some insight that maybe not all of us have as to what's happening with the NAR settlement. And I would love to just know your thoughts on how that affects our industry, on where our industry is going in the future of our industry, and ultimately what to do to prepare for it. That was a big question.
Yeah. So if I'm talking to a bunch of analysts or consultants, which I often do, and they ask what's going to happen, so look, commissions are going to come down, the number of agents is going to go down, and buyers and sellers aren't going to save any money. Right? Price of homes aren't going to go down. Right? The value of homes is market driven, and so on. So now, if I'm talking to our industry, to agents and teams, to this audience, what I think is going to happen doesn't change, but how it impacts someone watching this, it could be completely different. And here's what I mean by that. I think on average, commissions will come down, no doubt in my mind. But it's going to be disproportionately distributed. The inexperienced, the unskilled are going to get hammered, and the skilled and experienced are going to capture a larger part. So there are agents and teams that I think will make more money after these changes than they made before. And there's a whole lot of people that are going to struggle like they've never struggled before. So there's a decision here, and that is a decision to be which group you're going to be part of. And I think part of that goes down to just the simple, how do we view change? Do we view it as an opportunity, or do we view it as something we like, or something we're afraid of, or something we're scared of, or something we're mad at, or those are all useless waste of time and energy. I know that the top agents and the top teams that are excited about the change see it for what it is: opportunities to do more business, opportunities to recruit more agents, opportunities to have more buyers and sellers under contract than they've ever had before. Those are the things that people should be focused on. And what is it going to take to do that? What do I need to change in my systems? What do I need to change in my scripts? What do I need to be able to communicate my value proposition? What's going to be my process for getting someone to say, yes, I want you to be my agent? There's a lot that we could talk about there, but at a high level, that's my answer to your question.
Well, and if we go down maybe one step down, what would you say out of that list of things? What would you say is like the number one thing that somebody who says, okay, I got the right mindset, Chris, this is an opportunity, I'm going to go after it as an opportunity to grow my business. What's the biggest thing that I need to do as a team leader?
As a team leader, you need to make sure that your team is prepared, right? That your agents, so much of their success is going to hang on two things. One is their confidence level and their ability to communicate competently how things work, how they get paid, what the value proposition is. So if I'm a team member or a team leader, and I'm talking to a consumer, I have to be able to confidently and competently have a conversation that results in someone saying, okay, I get it. Let's go find me a house. Let's go do this, right? So Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, let me explain to you how the process works. Let me explain to you what we do that's different and unique. And let me explain to you how I get paid, or how we get paid. And being able to explain that in a competent manner. In any of those conversations, I'm not talking about lawsuits. I'm I'm not talking about NAR. I'm not talking about settlements, right? Consumer doesn't know or care about any of that. They want to buy a house. They want to sell a house. And if you think about it, it's really no different than what we've been doing forever with sellers, right? You walk into a seller's house, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. Here's how it works. Here's what we do that's unique and different. Here's how we help you get the results you want. Here's how we get paid. Right? It's the same conversation. We're now having it with buyers.
So good. So good. It is back to simple, not easy. We just got to know our value proposition, start treating buyer strategy sessions or presentations the same way we treat listing strategy sessions and presentations.
Yeah, and
So good.
that one point, John, of knowing our value proposition. At Movoto, we partner with top teams and agents, and we introduce buyers and sellers to them, and we do it via a live transfer. And those live transfers, those conversations were recorded. And I have listened to hundreds and hundreds of recorded calls. And as you can imagine, some of them are horrific, make you cringe, make your skin crawl. And some of them are fantastic. I heard one not too long ago where the consumer said, "Hey, before we set an appointment, I want to understand about your services. What do you do that's different? Like, why should I be working with you?" And the agent didn't answer the question, couldn't answer the question, didn't have an answer to the question. And he ended up asking it 4 different times during the conversation. And each time the agent got farther and farther away from an answer. And finally he said, "I don't think we're a match. I'm going to find someone else. Thanks. Goodbye." And I thought, wow, as an agent, a member of the team leader, you have to be able to answer the question, what do you do that's different? Or why should I hire you? Because sometimes you're going to be asked that. And even if you aren't asked that, that is part of what they're thinking. So you better address it. You better be in a position to be able to present a value proposition that's clear, concise, and do it in a confident way.
So good. So good. Well, I would be remiss with you as the leader of a major tech company in our industry. I'd be remiss to not ask you about how you feel like AI is shaping and will shape the future of our industry.
Yeah, it's going to have a big impact. It's going to have a big impact on every industry. And I could speculate a lot of different ways how I think it's going to shape it. I think what's maybe more relevant is how are we going to use it to shape the way we want shape. There's technology, whether it's artificial intelligence or any type of technology, it's as valuable as the applications. And so when we can say, hey, what can we use? What can we do to save time, to become more efficient, to become more effective? Whether it's using AI to write better responses to emails or better follow-ups or anything else, right? That helps you become more effective. If it helps you do it quicker, it becomes more efficient, right? I use ChatGPT or Gemini or Bard. I use them all the time, right? Whether it's communicating something, and I create better communications and I do it quicker and easier with less energy spent. So, right? So it helps me be more efficient. We can envision a world where we're using AI or AI is starting to do those things automatically for us, or where the search process is done more through machines being able to understand what my preferences are, right? That's been going on for some time, right? Like when we're looking at properties online, I hurt my knee on a vacation a couple of months ago and I had to buy a knee brace and looking at some stuff. And now in my Instagram feed and everywhere else, every ad is talking about knee pain, right? So the machines are learning, right? The algorithms are learning. So you envision a world where consumers will be aided to be able to find what they're looking for in new and different ways. It'll be exciting. Here's the one thing we know is that there's a few things that aren't changing. When a human is making a big emotional decision, they want and seek out guidance. I have some of the most capable and talented entrepreneurs that some of which we've all heard of that will contact me sometimes to get my input or to get my thoughts on something. Right? They can get the information online, they can get the answer to their questions, but they still want to talk to an expert. They want someone to advise them. So we have to position ourselves as that. And we have to be that, right? You can't just position yourselves and not be that, right? So
Right.
we have to do that. I think I'll say one more thing about it because this is a whole nother topic we talk forever on. But as technology evolves, what evolves along with it is two things: consumer behavior and consumer expectations. And I think it's important to look at, and you can look at yourself as a good example. What do you expect? What are you doing? How are you leveraging? How is your behavior changing when you make buying decisions or looking to buy something or trying to choose which restaurant to go to? As agents, we have to be anticipating those things. And we have to be providing a level of service that meets or exceeds the expectation levels of our consumers. If not, we're going to be behind. We're going to be chasing them. And if you're not meeting or exceeding expectations, you're not valuable. At some point, they're going to say, "Well, I could do this on my own, or I could do it with someone else, or I need to find someone that is valuable." Anyways, touched on a lot of things. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, it all comes back to the value proposition and understanding the evolving value proposition. And I love what you said about AI really helping us to complete our jobs. I'm saying that a little bit differently than you said it, but that was the message that I heard you say, is that you've got to keep your point of value. People still want you when you position yourself and create that value, position yourself as an authority and create that value. AI is a tool to help that. And as long as you keep providing that value, your AI is going to be a tool. It's going to be an opportunity and a tool, not a threat.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. So one last question as we wrap up. What's the most important thing, Chris Heller being an industry veteran and industry influence, what's the most important thing that team leaders need to know in today's market?
Oh, man. There's never one thing. So I'll give you a couple of them. As a team leader, you're only doing as well as the people you lead. So you have to make sure that you are providing value, that you are preparing, that you're training, that you're coaching, and giving your people the best chance to succeed. And if you have people that don't have the desire or aren't coachable or anything else, then it's time to look in the mirror and say, okay, why is this happening, and what do I need to change to do this? But I think one is you just need to be preparing your people, right? When there's change, as we said before, change creates opportunity. To be able to take advantage of the opportunity, we have to be prepared. You have to understand what you need to do and then move fast to do it. So answering it a different way to take advantage of what's going on as a team leader, you got to be decisive. You got to operate with a sense of urgency and make sure that your team is lockstep with you and is prepared to do those things. We have to lead at a high level.
John Maxwell says everything rises and falls on leadership. So what a great way to wrap up the conversation. Chris, thank you again so much for joining us on the show. Where can people find you, find Movoto, find your book, Dominant Thoughts? Where's a good place for people to look you up if they want to know more?
All right, I'll answer those. They can find the book on Amazon, Dominant Thoughts on Amazon. You can find Movoto.com. Yeah, that's our website. You can also go to ojo.com to learn more about what we do with agents, or you just contact me. You can find me on any social platform, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok. Feel free to message me. I'm happy to respond and help in any way I can.
Fantastic. Well, Chris, thank you again so much for your time investment into us, and excited to see what the future holds.
John, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
And that's a wrap on another episode of the Mega Team Mastermind. I hope you found some nuggets of wisdom that you can use to leverage your real estate team to make an impact and to build a legacy. A huge thank you to our incredible guest and, of course, to our sponsor, megateammentor.com, where you can get a free detailed assessment of your real estate team's health, including a free customized scorecard that will quickly and objectively diagnose the strengths and weaknesses of your real estate team business. That's megateammentor.com for your free real estate team health assessment. If you enjoyed the show, I would consider it a personal favor if you would subscribe or leave us a review so that we can get this podcast out to others who want to make an impact and leave a legacy. I hope you'll tune in to our next episode for more leadership insights, strategies, and stories of success and failure. Until then, this is John Tiller, and as always, I'd like to speak an ancient blessing on you as we go. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord turn his face toward you and give you Peace.